Hello, everyone, and welcome back in yet again to another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for tuning in. Happy Wednesday to you all. Should be a good show ahead for you guys. It's going to be a Thursday night football heavy show, previewing tomorrow night's game between the Broncos and the Saints, giving you all things betting advice, especially in terms of prop bets. Gonna be a weird one. Not exactly the most exciting. Definitely a very mysterious game. But then, after all of that, I'm going to continue and conclude with my positional rankings, my tight ends, and my defenses. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about the world of college football, the ever-hectic world of college football at that. I'm going to talk about some of the week's biggest games in terms of a betting perspective. But without further ado, before we begin, I do want to remind you that if you want to see more content such as this or other short content we might have on the channel, like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network as a whole. Great way to interact with different shows throughout the network. But if you want to interact with my show directly or other shows as well, make yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. They're a great way to interact with the show more deeply. You can either press the $, leave a tip or donation, or you can just leave a comment, question, concern, anything throughout the show. Just makes the show that much better. I really appreciate hearing all of your lovely opinions. Without further ado, let us jump right into today's show. Starting off, like I said, with tomorrow night's game. Should be a very weird one, like I said, between the Broncos and the Saints. Very mysterious kind of matchup between rookie QBs. Of course, we have Bo Nix, who has proven to be very erratic in his short tenure as the Broncos quarterback. And then Spencer Rattler, forced into the starting role for the New Orleans Saints after Derek Carr goes down with injuries. And having a very solid, if not, humdrum performance against the Bucs in a game that he wasn't expected to win. Now they meet, and I don't know how I feel about this game, whether or not it's going to be as explosive as I think, whether or not either of these offenses is going to put up consistent points. But all I know is that I'm going to be hyper-focused on how both of these QBs play. But without further ado, I'm going to give you my betting advice in this game. New Orleans is a 1.5-point favorite in this game. I don't know whether or not the line did or did not move just yet. The over-under is 37.5. The money line's Denver at -105, New Orleans at -115. But I think my biggest problem with this game is that if you're not comfortable with either of these quarterbacks in terms of point production, I don't know whether that makes it easy for you to bet on this game or not, because I feel this is going to be much more of a gauging process for both of these quarterbacks. I feel like I don't necessarily view this game as one where I'm really looking to win money off it. You know what I mean? I'm looking to see improvement from both of these guys. So that's why I'm not as hyper-focused on the betting odds for this game. But I still think that there will be moments where you see improvement from both of these guys that you may not expect. Because, let's face it, both of these teams are in weird situations right now. The Broncos playing much better, perhaps, than people thought coming into the season. A lot of people may have expected them to be dark horse candidates, but not to this degree. I certainly did not think that the defense would have played as well as it has up to this point, but that has been its saving grace. Whereas the offense has been a mix of incompetence from Bo Nix and the potential explosive play that makes you think that Bo Nix could be heading in the right direction. There's no in between, really. There's been no sign of Bo Nix either being a game-managing quarterback, much like, Sean Payton quarterbacks or want to become, or, the explosiveness needed to really make me think that the Broncos can put up points in a hurry on different teams. Whereas on the Saints side of things, For the first 2 weeks of the offense, they were historically good. And they were doing a lot of interesting things. Kamara was playing well. Olave was a bit of a bright spark. Rashid Shaheed, big deep threat. And now Derek Carr's injured. Olave might be out for this game. And Rashid Shaheed's lost his deep threat. And they haven't been running the football with Kamara as consistently as before. So the Saints right now are in a very weird spot. But the favorites, they remain in this game. And that's probably the most interesting aspect of this entire game from a betting perspective. The Saints feel like they're holding on to this favorites title in this game by a thread. Because I feel like the Broncos right now have more of a game plan to win games like this than the Saints do. Because the Saints, what they did to start the season was impressive, but I feel like it's papered over a lot of the cracks that they had in their team. Because right now the receiving core looks thin for poor Spencer Rattler, and their defense just gave up 51 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I feel like the Saints are more in free fall mode, whereas the Broncos are starting to find ways to win in games that they feel are manageable in their current situation. And so that's why I feel like if you want to bet, yes, shy away from this game, but also consider the fact that if you are betting, don't necessarily follow the money line or the favorite, because I feel like the Broncos right now hold all the leverage in this game. They seem to be, funnily enough, the more complete team right now, and they're walking into this game with house money because they're sitting in a very advantageous position for where people thought they were. At 3-3, you have an opportunity to make the AFC playoff race a little bit more contentious than people think. And you're right in the thick of it. You're not on the outside looking in just yet, like a lot of other teams who might just be better than you are. Like, for example, I feel like the Bengals would love to be where the Broncos are right now, even though a lot of people thought they would be 4-2 or 5-1 by now, probably. So the Broncos are in a very advantageous position right now. They hold all the house money in this game. And just looking at the matchup, I feel a little bit more confident that the Broncos can lean into their game plan offensively, in that Bo Nix can be a gunslinger, have those wow moments, and still rely upon their defense to get the job done. Whereas the Saints can't have so many opportunities to score the football if they don't really know how to move it, because Spencer Rattler, not for nothing, looked competent in that game, but he could have looked even better had Chris Olave played the full game, had Alvin Kamara been a factor, and if he wasn't throwing to a makeshift group. So I feel like, as weird as it is to say right now, the Broncos are in the better spot. But it is a home game for New Orleans. I feel like Spencer Rattler now is getting up to speed on how the NFL plays. So he'll have a set game plan of things that he's comfortable with doing, but I don't think it will be enough. Because the reality of the situation is, I think the Denver Broncos are playing like a top 10 defense right now. I think that Vance Joseph has done a fantastic job of turning this unit around from where it even was last year to now. Because this is going to be what drives the Denver Broncos. I feel like if this defense is scrappy enough, can pull out victories for this team in manageable games, then of course I think the Broncos might have a say in the AFC playoff picture, as weird as it is to say at this moment. But what I'm looking for in this game really doesn't come down to who wins, because I feel like I've have a clear picture of the Broncos winning this game in my mind. And I feel like it will happen. I just want to see both these offenses improve, because the defenses for both of these teams have the least questions, although the Saints are getting a little bit iffy on that side of the football. I feel like what I want to see out of this game is at least one or two drives I can take away from both of these guys that says to me, for Bo Nix, that the Broncos made the right decision in drafting him and trying to develop him, and for Spencer Rattler to potentially say, hey, the Saints have something here. Why not build around Spencer Rattler for the future if, Derek Carr becomes a little bit more injury prone in the latter stages of his career, so that we know that Spencer Rattler can be relied upon. And so that's what I want to see. This game is more than a win or a loss for both of these teams. It's about the potentials of their futures. And so I'm not holding that much weight from a betting perspective, but I still respect both of these teams very highly for what they could look like in the future. As Andre entered the chat, welcome, my brother. How are you today? I think that you ask a very interesting question here for your fantasy team. Should I drop Charbonnet for Javonte Williams? I only have Charbonnet for the K9 handcuff. I feel like, I wouldn't be mad at this, because while both of them haven't been up to snuff in their respective offenses, Charbonnet just does not look like he's going to get that many opportunities for Seattle, because their run game is just appallingly bad at this point. And I don't think that they're going to find a way to get either of these backs, as hard as it is for me to say, because I do feel like Kenneth Walker is a huge talent and Zach Charbonnet can contribute here and there. But at the end of the day, it's not looking like the Seattle run game is going to be a huge factor or a huge difference in how they approach their offensive setup. Whereas for the Broncos, I kind of feel like they need Javonte Williams as a piece in this offense a little bit more, because I like all of their weapons, right? Because Andre said, yeah, unless there's a canine injury, right? I agree as well. Because when I look at it, Javonte Williams just spells like someone who is ready for his breakout moment this season. I feel like tomorrow night could be a huge opportunity for him, should the whole Broncos offensive operation go awry, but also in the future as well, because if you are relying on Kenneth Walker and someone else in your running back room, chances are you're placing too much weight on the other guy in your running back room. Whereas if you experiment with your backups and bring in a guy like Javonte Williams, I feel like he's someone who in the future I can see having a pretty big game. So ultimately, I think at least for this week, it's worth trying to see if Javonte Williams can give you some good fantasy production, because it's a matchup where he could have a big moment. But that's just my opinion. Continue to let me know what you think in the comments about this game and how you're approaching it, both betting and fantasy-wise. But we're about to take a short break, and we come back on the other side. I'm going to give you a little bit of prop bets advice, because I think there's some interesting players in this game that can get you valuable money. We'll be right back to talk about that after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.